That's not gonna work right. That's the exhaust. All right, the dreaded check engine light. Get our glove box to close. All right, messing with this Acura Integra. 1989 Acura Integra. And the hatch, trunk, what have you, will not latch. You close it, it doesn't latch. So, I figured it's probably just an alignment adjustment issue. So I got myself some washers. You can kind of see on here there was some washers at one point. I'll start off with a couple washers and then see how it fits, see if it latches. If it doesn't latch, I'll add some more washers. Alright, so I actually ended up putting a couple washers on both sides, washered up, and now it stays latched. Still a little shaky, which I don't like. It's probably still going to hear a bit of that driving down the road, potentially. But hopefully, replacing the seal will take care of that. Also got to put some new struts in here, because as you can see, you got to use a stick to hold it up, but it latches, and I'm happy with that. That's the exhaust. All right, first drive in the '89 Acura Integra. I've already driven it, but this is Maria's first time driving it.
Oh,
It's got some vibrations. I'm positive.
sounds like it, doesn't it?
You are not. Open up the sunroof.
Rickety crickety. Oh,
Oh, it was way worse. Before I fixed the trunk was like, ba-boosh, ba-boosh.
I'm totally waiting because I don't know what this car is going to do.
Oh, it's going to take off if you want it to.
So loud. So loud. Unnecessarily loud.
See,
Now
you're in
that
gear.
way, yeah. Totally
You're already in gear, yeah. How's it feel though?
It feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's shaky. It's definitely shaky.
Obviously the brakes are soft, it needs brakes.
But it definitely has some zip
Yeah.
goes. Oh, that was
a grind.
That was a grind.
Yeah.
That was me.
Doesn't like to go in the first when it's rolling.
Interesting.
Doesn't usually like to go in the first until you're stopped.
Okay.
My Acura was like that too. Back in the day.
It's funny how like now that it's just fine. It doesn't
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah. The dreaded check engine light. As you can see, there's a lot missing here on this console. It's very incomplete in here. Well, I shouldn't say very, but This is still intact. This is still good. That's awesome. All the vents are still good. The heat actually works. Doesn't have an AC compressor, so no AC. That's just a blank button normally. That's easy to fill in. Just like this. But I think today's project is going to be this glove box situation. It is obviously in bad shape. Not fully secured. Not secured at all. And broken. But I want to see why it won't latch. And I'm sure it's because that's broken as well. Let's see if we can get a look at this thing. I don't know what I'm looking at. But luckily, we have another car to compare it to. And that's there. This part's here, so potentially we just make a little latch up here and we get our glove box back. Get our glove box to close. Let's take a look at another car that's in better shape. Oh, so it's just basically a thick piece of wire that comes down and screws in. You see that? There we go. See what I'm looking at here? So all I gotta do is make that out of metal. Not a problem. I just need a good thick piece of rod and or wire, and I can craft that, assuming the screw holes are still there. So we know where the screw holes should be. Got this thing here, which is for the light mechanism, and then right next to that should be a spot for a couple of screws to go in. Let's double check if that's the case. And upon further inspection, we can clearly see, let's see if I can get this on camera, it's broken. That's where those, should be a little piece of plastic there that rod screws into. Which means we can just screw into the glove box housing itself. Oh, this screws in right here. That one's broken. We're gonna have to make some stuff, which I'm actually looking forward to. It's fun making stuff. First things first, need to find a piece of wire and or rod that's fairly thick and firm. I'm sure I have something in my various piles of junk that should work. And if not, make a little trip to the hardware store. Well, looking through the old junk pile here, don't judge me, or do judge me, is what it is. I'm pretty sure this beverage holder is gonna do exactly what I need it to do. Specifically, possibly that part right there. Alright. Thank you, old mountain bike, for sacrificing your drink holder. And see how the glove box works. It's got a hook that comes down and it latches. Not a big deal. Seems pretty straightforward. Let me grab my piece and see if I can match something up. Alright, let's take some preliminary measurements with the old tape here, and it looks like altogether, I mean, that's about an inch right there. So it's going to want to hang down about an inch, looks like. That's our hang down. The rest of it we don't care about, but this part that hangs down should be about an inch. So it looks like we'll have plenty of room to play with. So I feel pretty comfortable just cutting it right here. Just going to cut it right here. And I might be able to even use this screw hole but that's weird. Okay. So it's going to be something like that. Which, once again, is a little jiggly, but we can play with that and make that work. So I think what I'll start with doing is cutting that. I'm just going to cut this and we'll see where things want to line up. Or maybe it's better to use this part. This part that's more narrow. I think so. So because it kind of resembles what's over there. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Changing plans. Alright, that worked. Now we simply sand this down. I'll show you a trick for that. Just go over to a piece of concrete you don't care about where no one can see. Sand it down. Like I said, do this where no one can see and judge you. Excellent. Oh, probably should just cut this part off too. Alright, time for some preliminary finaglements. This doesn't quite look like I want it to look, though. I screwed up. I should have kept the loop, because I could have squeezed the loop and made it smaller, made it fit what I wanted. Now I have this ugly looking thing. That's alright, though. Because it's going to be something like that. Also, I can move it backwards and forwards. Oh man, that's not gonna work right. That's not gonna work right. Nope. How could I make it work right? Alright, some more hacksaw action and some square tubing that I had laying around. Later, I have devised a plan which involves some JB Weld and I cut a couple small pieces. They fit exactly in place, like a couple of buck teeth. And this is where it would have originally had the striker, wire, loop, whatever you want to call it, that would secure to the latch. This thing got a little weird. Wasn't really feeling it. Might end up still making use of it, but ultimately I need some good structure here to drill and to screw into, and that's what I'm going to create with a little bit of metal and some epoxy. Use protective gloves when you're working with this stuff. I'm a big fan of JB Weld, if you couldn't tell. Stuff has never let me down when applied appropriately. What we do have set up here is the grinder. This little bench grinder. I'm going to turn my attention back to this glove box, because I want to grind this down. So what I ended up doing is putting some epoxy on this with a piece of masking tape. I put a piece of masking tape right here. Didn't use any backing or anything, probably could have. We already had a little bit of material still, so I epoxied on top of that, and it started to kind of sag a little bit from the weight of it, but I was able to just flip it over and keep it in place. Once I got this initial part to solidify, so it had the masking tape, had a little bit of epoxy on it, then I put a piece of metal that I cut. I just cut a piece of sheet metal out with some tin snips. It's these guys to cut it. So once I cut that piece of metal, I just put some epoxy on it, laid it on here, and then put some more epoxy on it. Then I proceeded to, over probably a couple days, put more epoxy on it until I was comfortable. I'm just trying to match the thickness of this for the most part, and also make sure I have a place to drill through. Alright, now next piece of the puzzle, we're going to get our piece. As you can see, it has a pin in it still. I'm going to see if I can knock that out of there. See, I used this nail, which I had to grind the head of it down a little bit so it would fit inside this hole here. And then I was able to hit that with the hammer. I'll just finish it off with some vice grips. Gently use the vice grips. I'm not going to worry about pulling this all the way out, just enough. Let's see what we're working with. Obviously this is not going to fit, not even close. There's too much material there. I just want to get an idea of how much material I should remove. Actually not that much. So I'm going to take it over to my grinder, start removing material. Pretty much what I'm going to do is keep comparing with this as I'm grinding this down, just to make sure I don't remove too much material. This looks kind of ugly right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and start with that. Making some progress. It's got a bit of a high spot here. So now we'll take our piece that we're trying to make work here. And as you can see, the thickness is pretty much spot on. But I can see that this is way too tall, so I'm gonna keep grinding on that. So I took a Sharpie and made a mark, trying to follow the lines of this piece here. So I'm going to get pretty close to that line as I grind, but I'm going to basically not go all the way up to it. I want to still see that line because I'm not sure of how much material to remove exactly. That should get me in the ballpark. All right. And I just destroyed it. So all my work has just been destroyed. I'm thinking what happened is I didn't properly mix my epoxy, so I had some soft stuff in there that crumbled really quickly. It did not stick to my piece of metal. This is the piece of metal I cut, so that'll happen. Probably got it too hot, it was a little too aggressive. Combination of that and just not having my epoxy mixed right resulted in a failure of the part. So I could either try this again, or I could just make this whole thing, this whole section out of metal, which is what I'm going to do. Now it will accept the metal that I'm going to add to it. Alright, so here's the two pieces I came up with. I ignored that, I drew that to kind of figure things out, but here's what I have. I'm actually going to stagger them like this because I want to mount them on the same side. Probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet, but basically I'm going to mount both of these on the same side. I'm going to bend the corner up to fit in our little hinge. Makes sense to me right now. We'll see how it makes sense in a few moments. First I got to bend these. Next question is, how much am I going to bend these? I don't know. I don't know. A rough guesstimate. Alright, got that tight. Gonna use my vice grips to get the bend started. This is pretty thin metal, so not hard to bend it. Alright, so now we got these two things bent. What does that really do for us? Theoretically, I should be able to space these out. Oh, and I already see my first problem. I should not have staggered that out. That wasn't necessary to do that. That's okay, we can fix that with a little bit of a snippety snip. But I'm just figuring stuff out as I go. The reason I have to cut this extra bit is because that's giving me height, not width. I'm looking for width. Alright. Got the pieces cut, trimmed. I was thinking that having one of them being taller was going to give me length, but I'm not. But it actually, what it did was give me height. And I don't want height, I want width. What I mean by that is I want these to be apart a bit so that when this goes in here, it's sitting in there relatively snug. It's not just one piece and able to do that, because you know it'll be doing that when we're going down the road. It'll be like, don't want that, want this. You hear that? Exactly, you hear nothing. That's what we're going for. Alright, I made some tweaks, made some adjustments. Had to cut this a bit more, put it on the grinder just to smooth it out a little bit. It's not perfect by any means. Got the two pieces clamped together, and I also made these two dots. I'm going to be drilling in these two spots here. Start with my small guy here. Get a piece of wood behind it to drill into. Give me a little more stability. Or something. You could use a punch so that the drill bit doesn't wander all around. I think I'll be able to get away with it here. Another trick is to go backwards first. Very gently, especially with this tiny drill bit, I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to do the same thing here. Now I'm going to go forward. Alright, our initial pilot holes are drilled. If this was thicker metal, I'd be using some WD-40 or something to lube this up, but this is thin metal, so and we drilled those pilot holes, so that went through no problem. Now, I'm not exactly sure exactly where to put these. I'm just going to eyeball it and hope that it's correct enough. I'm going to use a nail to make a mark. That didn't do shit. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Sweet. Let's go ahead and ruin our part and drop it. Alright. That's what we got. Looks like we know what we're doing, kind of. So, this might be a problem, this extra material here. I'm just going to go ahead and grind that right now. Looks like it's going to work. That one, as you can see, I probably ground it a little too much. Didn't leave very much meat there, but should work out. This has a little burr. I'm going to get rid of that burr. Then we're going to bolt it up and see how everything works. I'm going to screw this into the glove box, and I'm just going to use some small screws and some nuts to secure it in place. And I like this orientation so much. I'd like to tape it, but I don't have any tape, so not handy anyway. Alright, I was able to mark my holes with a marker. And I'm going to open them up a bit just to make it easier to get everything together and aligned. Now I got to find some hardware. I got one of these guys. You can't even see them probably. Got one of these guys. Alright, so this is what I'll be using to secure my pieces. Everything doesn't fit perfect, but that's okay because we made sure to give ourselves some wiggle room. I'm not too concerned about these coming loose, just because of the nature of the plastic that we're screwing into, so it should be alright. It's a little bit of a tight fit. Just going to squeeze it. Alright, I'm going to shove the pin back in and we should be good to go. This would be a great opportunity to use a small punch, which I actually do have, but I don't know where it is. So we'll do that, and we'll use our makeshift punch, this nail. Alright, after some cutting and drilling and epoxying and breaking stuff and coming back and cutting and drilling and making some pieces out of metal, this is what we got. This is how I secured it. Can't even see it on the inside. Once you put a bunch of junk in the glove box, you're not going to be able to see it. The orientation is a little bit different. Just as far as this being a little bit taller than this one. I think as far as where they sit, depth-wise, it's pretty much the same, but yeah, this one is definitely taller. But I think with this being ovaled, should have enough room there to kind of get it in place. And the main thing with the glove box is it should open and close, and it should stay closed. So I think once that's the case, we'll be fine. Also got to figure out how to attach this part. This is also missing. I did put some metal, epoxy some metal in that is actually very strong and held up well, so I'll be able to drill into this and go from there. I think I will just, this is a little bit different from the stock one. This is actually for a Honda Accord. I forget what year. But I think once again, if I have any issues with it, with where it is, I can either bend this metal here, or I can drill some additional holes. I think the holes are supposed to be more toward the top. This is one from my '87 Integra. Took it off just to see if it would work, and it does. And as you can see, the holes are in a different spot. So I don't know if that's gonna really matter though, because once again we can just bend it and make it work. So I'm gonna start here with that from there, and then go to the next step. We'll see what happens. Alright, the garage is a little less crazy, a little less chaotic, slightly more organized. Let's take a look at what I accomplished here. Hopefully I managed to record the before, but here is the after. As you can see, someone did make the effort to duct tape the glove box shut, which is kind of ridiculous, but we have made it a functioning glove box now. There's those 2 screws and nuts. Here is our latch, but I did end up drilling some additional holes. So here's the original ones. I drilled some up here because after looking at it, the way it sat in there, I could just tell that I would have to do that. So no problem. I used some self-tappers. That made it easier. I can always replace that with some better screws if I decide to, but I probably never will, because as you can see, it closes and it locks. This is a little jiggly. Might have to navigate this, but for now, totally works. Now I'm going to see if I can get that nastiness off of the plastic. I don't know. Let's take a little tour, shall we? Clearly it's missing something here. And that would be this.